everybody, it's the Mills team, and we're back again. We know how much you loved this webinar a month ago, so we thought we'd give it another go, and thank you so much for your feedback that you shared. We're so excited to chat again. So we're here once again with Sarah.
Hi.
And Mike and Christine, our newest team member.
Thank you.
Welcome. Throw you into the fire. Your first day on camera. Way to go.
So exciting.
Very
And
exciting.
we have Katie and Sue, and I'm Lauren, and of course we're the Mills team all together. And yeah, we had so much fun last time, so we thought we'd kind of talk again about the market and kind of where things are at a month later, which is maybe a little bit different than where we were a month ago. So yeah, I mean, how's everyone feeling? If you had to describe the market to somebody right now, what would we say? How is the market today?
It's kind of interesting, right? Because it's when we met February 24th, that was the day in hindsight, they raised interest rate for the first time in a long time. And it was unfortunately when Ukraine got bombed too. Like as we were talking, it was kind of we were mentioning that, and it seemed as though everything had been ramping up so much, and it almost felt like it did in April 2017 when the government brought in the foreign buyers tax. It was kind of a day you could point to that things felt like it was going to calm down and settle down. And don't you kind of feel like that February 24th was almost that day? And since then, I mean, it's still a good market. There's still a seller's market. There's still multiple offers, but it feels as though even though the stats might say that the market's still soaring, we just kind of I think we're all feeling like we're just at that precipice of change where we may be heading into a healthier market.
Right, a healthier one. I think that's absolutely true. And I think it's going to give buyers a little bit of relief from that crazy pressure that they've been under. I think we're seeing a little bit more inventory, which is helpful. And hopefully that'll continue as we go further into the spring as well.
Yeah, and I think it's that classic, first quarter review where typically every year you sort of see this sort of the first houses out of the gate, the first sellers, they do really, really well. And then the neighbors all see what their neighbors sold for, so they're like, let's get on the market. Very much like last year, almost, as well. But the key difference is, as you said, I think the interest rate increase plus the pending increase or increases, I guess. We'll see how it all plays out. And then, the war, sadly. So, and plus COVID restrictions, people are living, don't you find like people are going away and they say, well, I'm not around this weekend. And all of the last 2 years, nobody said, I'm not around. Everyone was like, sure, let's go look. Now we can,
absolutely.
right?
Coming back to normalcy a little bit.
Yeah, and I think COVID was driving so many of those buying and selling decisions, whereas now it feels like real life. Like, some people are coming back to work more, and it just, people are
They have other things to do other than buy and sell real estate. Of course, they still want to spend time with us, I'm sure. It's Christine. Literally, I started my first day in real estate was Black Friday. It was October 1987, and after that, and then everything after that. So Christine, you're kind of starting at an interesting time, and coming from a banking background, I think you'll be able to add a lot of really good, I think, kind of statistical banking knowledge to our team. It'll be amazing.
not to mention that you've been a Mills team client several times.
Yes, that's how I knew about this exceptional team. But being in banking, obviously we paid very close attention to the markets, just in a slightly different way. And the interesting thing with real estate is we see the changes, but it's a little bit more delayed. Just the natural time it takes to get a house on the market, to close and to move and all of those things. Whereas, what I was doing before in banking, it was more of an immediate reaction. So it's interesting to watch it all unfold.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
But it is interesting when you talk about delays, because the stats came out yesterday, and the stats for March were still very, very positive. Like the average GTA price went down slightly, just dipped below the 1.3 million versus just over the 1.3 million mark. But what we're kind of maybe sensing in the market is, kind of feet on the street. Like I think we know a little bit ahead of time that somehow the stats are always a bit delayed. The press is always a little bit delayed. So lucky you guys listening to us.
Yeah.
You get it firsthand here on the street. So still an exceptionally good market. But
and probably different depending on where you are looking, right?
sure.
Like, would you say Toronto is like 416 is maybe a little bit different than the 905, and kind of Durham and Peel and what maybe is going on there.
Yeah,
Like,
and Mike, what do you? I mean, you do a lot of Durham work. What are you kind of thinking and feeling may happen there versus what has happened?
No, it's similar to essentially what we were talking about. It's definitely just seeming like the buyer pool is being spread out, meaning there is more inventory in the market, which is a good thing. I think it's just more so because we are still seeing bully offers come in. There are less multiple offers, but things are still moving. So I think it's just the time frame for that one person to find the house is just extending a little bit. So I
So
think
there's quite the panic, you mean? Yeah.
so to
Yeah.
find that one buyer, January, February would have taken, 4-day, offer situation or an offer date situation. Now it might take just a little bit more time. So less things with no offer dates may be coming that way, which again isn't a bad thing. Or maybe even the time in which offer dates, the time frame from offer dates might be a little
Yeah, a
more
little bit
extended,
longer.
whether it's 4 days to 5, 6, 7 days. It's just, I think the time frame for finding the one person that's going to spend the number that you want, it's just going to take a little bit longer.
And it's so interesting to see those changes too, and even in our strategies when we're working with the buyer and seller, and whether they, do we set an offer date, or and how far sort of below market do you need to set the price to have that strategy work, or over time, I'm imagining we might come out more at market value without necessarily a date.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
it's so interesting to see, and I feel like we're so lucky because amongst the team, we work in so many different areas of the city, and then even within the brokerage, having the West End office, the downtown office, and the central office, I think it gives us such a good perspective because
Absolutely.
every neighborhood is so different, especially when things are a bit volatile,
Right.
that it really helps to see that different
Yeah.
perspective in different
And
neighborhoods.
it's keeping everyone on their toes. I mean, like even seeing listings with no offer dates, you're just like, oh my God, like when was the last time you even saw that? And at the same
Or
time,
price
it's
changes.
like, yeah,
Lots of
100%.
price
And
changes.
then like the same time, you're like, oh, nice, like no offer date. But it's like
But-
now the whole thing of no offer date. Well, you can get an offer at any time. You don't have that time.
So you
that's,
have to be so quick,
Right.
so on top of it.
Yeah.
100, yeah.
So like we should talk about those strategies for the buyers and the sellers. So that's a perfect one for the buyer.
Yeah.
Like your strategy is if a property gets listed today and there's no offer date, you have to be the first one in the door if you think it's going to be
Right.
a property
A good
that you're
one.
going to be interested in, right?
yeah, 'cause
Right.
you never know.
Yeah, you better have your ducks in a row, have access to that deposit money so you can run to the bank and get a draft deposit that same day. You can't be transferring funds from one account to another. And if they haven't provided a home inspection report,
Yeah.
Which is so frustrating because
frustrating, oh my
I mean, we always do on our listings, but so many agents don't, and then it's so hard for the buyer because can they quickly do one themselves, or do they take that chance? And it's
Yeah, and that wouldn't be our recommendation.
It's so interesting as I hear us talk, partly it shows out we're always nimble. We're always moving so quickly as a team. But if you think about how we really, even through the last 2 years of this really heated market, we still invoke that same strategy. When we saw a good listing, even though it had an offer date, there was always language in a lot of the listings that said a preemptive could still take place. So what would we tell our buyers? As soon as we see it, we've got to jump on it, see it, decide if we're in
I feel
or
like
out.
I should ask you what a preemptive means only for our clients
Oh,
who may
yes,
not know
yes.
what
That's a
that
good
word
point.
is.
Or you may not know what a bully is.
Or bully.
Which are the same thing.
We are not bullies, just so you know. We're very nice.
I know,
We're all very nice.
We should have like
However, because
a list of terms or something that
I
we're
was
talking
telling one of
about.
my senior citizen clients, I was saying bully. She goes, I don't like those bully people, so I'm not dealing with any of them. That was pretty funny. But yeah, good point. So really meaning that the seller would be open to looking at an offer prior to the offer date, right? So for those clients who are not familiar with that, it's been pretty commonplace for a number of years. One would argue during the 2 years of COVID, there really, in most cases, wasn't really a need for that so much because there was so much buyer demand. Right. But the reality was, it was happening. So we've always had that strategy of make a decision quickly, decide if we're in or out. And if we're in, then we can get all our ducks in a row, as Sue said. And if not, if we're out, then we're out moving on to the next one. But now, you're right. I mean, if there's no offer date, it even becomes more, in some ways, more accelerated. But we've always kind of worked that way. We've always said to our buyers, get in early, decide if we're going, and then whatever research, if we have more time to do the research, that's great. If we have less time, guess what? We'll do it, and we'll make sure we're ready for you.
Right.
So,
Yeah, well, the market changes, but the process stays the exact same.
Right.
'Cause God, would you ever
Exactly.
kick yourself if you felt like it is different, but then you lose out for just not reacting quickly enough? It's
Right.
just,
Yeah.
you don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is kind of interesting though, because they're really the options now that from a seller, the options they would have would be if we think, let's say we think the value is $1.5 million. So where before we might have set the price anywhere from $999 to $1.1 million, $1.2 million, knowing, having full confidence that the market we'd set our offer date, and either somebody would do this bully or preemptive offer and take us to the price we're looking for ahead of our offer date, and typically, you'd only really look at a bully or a preemptive offer if it was probably higher than what you thought you might get on the offer date. Or do we go back to the old way of doing real estate, which is basically you do your research, you figure out what a property's worth, and you set the price kind of as close as possible to that market value and look at offers as they come. But it's hard because each strategy has its own pluses and minuses, like from both a seller's and a buyer's perspective. Like even you think from a buyer's perspective, what was nice about having an offer date was you did have some time probably to do your research, do your due diligence, go back and show your parents or take your kids or whatever, and thinking you could hopefully count on that date, where now you might just have to boom, get in there and can you...
Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes or no, can you do it?
But I think that's what volatility provides, are those sort of unique opportunities. And the market's never, straight up. So I think there are always these little bobbles in average price. So I think that's where really the value is knowing almost ahead of time what those changes are, so you can jump
Yeah.
in.
I'm finding it so interesting. Like, it's amazing the things that get you excited. But like when I see price changes coming across my email, I'm like, I
Which
remember the
usually means
first
a
one
price
was,
reduction.
well,
usually would
normally,
be.
so this
Yeah,
is,
no,
I don't know
I
about you guys, but I've been explaining price reductions to my clients, and they're saying, well, I just don't understand. So it was at 2.2, and they didn't get an offer, 2.2 million, and now they're price changing to 2.5. They're like, how does that make sense?
Yeah,
And I
that's
know
a hard one for people to understand.
right?
Yeah.
But the reality is, I think we will start to see, and where I do feel, I think we've already said it, maybe there's some opportunity for some of our buyers that are, and I have a number of absolutely lovely, as we all do, first-time buyers that have been trying to get in a very, very tough market, that there could be some golden opportunities where someone needs to sell. There is a few less buyers. Some buyers have been priced out of the market a little bit, or the price range they can spend in is gone because of the interest rate change. So watching for those opportunities, like the price change, or being Sue, I think you had one where we had a nice buy.
Yeah, so
the other night.
last night in Durham actually, and we kind of expected a range, and there were still it was the offer date, and there were still 4 offers, and they sent 3 of us kind of back for more because we were all in the running. But we ended up getting it, which was amazing. But we ended up getting it kind of at the low end of that $400,000 swing that there could have been on the property, because it was over $2 million property, so there could have been a big swing on it. But it was it was great to get it, and I think that we've said before too. I think for anybody kind of buying right now, anyways, you can never. Well, Christine's a perfect example. She's been our client. We were joking that you bought a different.
I only buy at the peak. That's the only time I buy.
And hopefully you're selling at the peak too, but you're not selling. You're holding on to your own.
I'm only buying.
Very smart. She's only buying. Hear
sell.
that message. That's an important message.
But what we do know is
Yeah.
that my daughter bought in February of 2017. 2 months later, the market. But now, however many. 5 years later or whatever, it's up at least 50% over what she bought it for. So it's just, as long as you're buying for the long term and can hang into the market, that's a big thing. So even with this one last night, even if it's really impossible to predict. But sometimes when we see these peaks and valleys, there might be, in some micro markets, there might be a 10 or 15% correction over time. But we're still well ahead of the curve. Sellers are still doing very, very well, and buyers still, even if they buy, if last night turned out to be the absolute peak of the market, it'll be fine. They're buying this house for the next 20 years, and one day they'll look back and go, "Oh my God, can you believe we bought that house for $2.2 million?"
Yeah.
Like it was
It's
the deal of
like
the
what we
century.
say now when we're selling those houses for $2.2 million, and we see that they bought them 50 years ago for $30,000, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, look at that.
For sure. For sure. But I think the expectations are really important, because I think some sellers, they really need to be educated about they may have heard one price that in hindsight maybe didn't even make sense. But I think when we're doing our research, we need to look at the bulk of the activity and not just the one outlier that can sort of sway
Yeah, that
people's
one sale that
expectations.
happened in January that
Yeah.
didn't
Right.
make sense at the time and now really probably doesn't make sense.
Right. And we're still doing everything to try to maximize
Yeah,
all of those
for
prices,
sure.
obviously. And we're not anticipating a huge, it's not, I mean, I wouldn't use the word correction or, I think it's just going to be maybe leveling a little bit or
Right.
the amount of increase that may kind of slow in its pace.
Yeah, 'cause there's still properties that are going like quickly too. So it's to say it's a correcting, I don't think is fair. It's just interesting. We're in that sort of in
It's
between.
so interesting every day.
Yeah.
It's like
It really
every
is.
day
Like
just-
getting up and going to work
I know.
every
It's
day.
like what are we gonna find today?
Well, even
It
saying
is
there were
that
4
false change,
offers.
though.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Sorry, go ahead.
That having 4 competitive offers, it just wasn't 24.
Right,
Or
yes,
14.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
But it's
exactly.
still-
There were still 4
People
four
were
competitive
competitive
offers.
and it was
yeah.
4, right?
Right,
Yeah.
and 3
That's
people
right.
waking
Right,
up today that
in-
still need a property.
Right, in any normal market, you would have been, as a seller, you would have been thrilled to get 4 offers.
And even in those like 20, 30 offer scenarios, it always seemingly is 4 or 5
really
that
the
are
key
actually
players, the key
competing. So if
players. That's a
anything,
very
it's
good
more
point.
so like
So it's the
the
real
5.
core people.
These people are interested in wanting to buy this.
Right.
It's always you got to think of it.
That's
that
a really
way.
good point because I think part of the function is with this crazy system that's developed with a low asking price and an offer date where the expectation is going to go way higher. When you're right, when you got the 15, 20 offers, so many of those people were just hoping with all their heart that the actual asking price was where they could get
Right.
it, and there was
Yeah.
never any hope of that happening. So it is. It's such
Quality
a.
It might
versus
get a little bit more
quantity.
fair
Exactly.
for those people.
Which
Quality, which is
isn't a
always the
bad
way you
thing
want it.
either.
Quality versus
Yeah.
Even with the showings, right? There was probably
Yes.
80 showings
Yes.
in a single weekend. It's people that just want to be able to get in the door, and maybe they're not qualified.
There was nothing
even.
to do other than see real estate.
Yeah.
So everybody was
You weren't allowed into
Exactly.
restaurants or movie theaters or.
Okay, so I know we can't predict where things are going to. You just said that. We're going to get the crystal ball off the shelf, dust that off. I mean, there's a few things that may impact the future of real estate. So we've got a federal budget that's coming out maybe tomorrow. We'll see what they're laying on the table for us. Obviously, the interest rates that we'll see. I think we know they're going up. We're going to see that a few more times this year for sure. And then the war, which is so tragic.
Yeah, and
too.
again, and it doesn't directly impact us, but I think
Yeah.
it's just, it's so sad beyond words, but it's also, it's just unrest and I think the fear of inflation and, everything kind of, it's such a small world now.
Yeah.
It's,
It is. I mean, the longer it goes, the impact's greater, I think. But
And what do you think about the impact that the interest rates? Because I keep thinking, well, the interest rates are going to go up, but does it stop the people who want to buy right now, or does it just change what they buy, or will they just say, look, it's changed our affordability. They went up by 2 points. We can afford 20% less. We're taking a seat on the bench, or do they say maybe we're not getting that semi-detached house and now we're going to go buy a condo? Like, do you think it takes buyers out of the market completely?
I think it's situational basis because the people that need to buy something will. It's just a matter of what. Maybe those people that are looking to buy something bigger, or those maybe specifically looking, it might change a little bit. But I still think, and the market somewhat doing little things changing, like the lower prices, they may very well still be able to. It's just a matter of when and where, right?
I think it's a classic. I mean, I think we put our stats out today and we said more of a normalized market. I feel like we're heading into a more normal market
healthier
where there's
market,
a
for
healthy
sure.
market, where there's always buyers and sellers in every market. And the one fundamental thing that we didn't really touch on today, though, too, is that immigration has restarted.
Right.
And prior to COVID, we had a housing shortage. We still have a housing shortage. So there's always going to be buyers and sellers. Some people, I think it will impact either what they buy or if they buy, but I definitely still feel that the market will still move. And, I know we still have, and, Mike and Christy, we all have these great first-time buyers who, our encouragement is still, even though interest rates are rising, it's still incredibly low. Like,
they're
I'm going to
still
say, when I bought my first house,
historically
interest rates were 18%.
We were talking about this
So
the other day.
3%, I'm like 4%,
yeah, I know.
I'm like,
Take it and run.
it's so good. Like,
Just
don't
I'm
worry.
used to them being,
And because, the
5%
government,
or 1%.
government did that smart stress test too, people have had to qualify at 5.25%, and rates now are inching up towards 4%. But and they'll maybe have to qualify 2% higher than that. But at least people that have gotten their mortgages and they're coming up for renewal, they really shouldn't be in trouble. So I think the
Right.
government was very smart
It's
in
amazing
that.
that was 5 years ago. So a lot of those people will be coming
Yeah,
up for
for
renewal,
renewal, yeah,
but
that's
that they've been able to qualify and manage those payments for 5 years.
And I
is
think
great.
that's the biggest misconception about all of this is like people still forget that you're still qualifying against the stress test, which is 5.25, which
Or 2%
Or
over
2%
the-
higher.
Yeah.
Posted rate.
Yeah.
right.
So it will be interesting to see what the federal budget does because, it's tomorrow, we'll find out. But they, some of the things bantied around are, either a speculation tax for investors.
Foreign buyers, yeah.
Or the foreign buyer tax may go up, 15 to 20% from 15 to 20%, which probably won't have a huge
No,
impact.
yeah.
But if there could be some major structural things that they're talking about, like if they're talking about like a 10-day cooling off period, where just like when you buy a new condo, you have 10 days to make a decision whether you really want to firm up that deal. If that happened in residential resale, that could be an absolute game changer because everybody wakes up the next morning after they bought a house and go, oh my God, what did I do?
Right, or another house comes on the market down the street and they're like, let's just go see that one. Hey, do we like that one better? You
And
know?
as Chris Lydon was saying yesterday, we always quote Chris because he's so brilliant, our
brilliant broker.
her brilliant broker. But I think what happens is you don't. Hopefully, the government isn't making permanent long-term changes for what's really a short-term situation that the market itself is starting to correct anyways. If you just let the free market ride, it actually when it goes up too fast. It figures itself out. So I don't think we need more supply. If the government could step in to do anything, they need to build affordable housing for people that aren't ever going to be able to buy. That's where we really need the government's help.
And that's why we need more videos like this getting out to consumers so they know that there has been a shift. Because a lot of times the headlines sound, oh, it's still a great, things are going crazy. And the reality is it's still a strong market. We've said that. But it has shifted slightly, and the correction, and I know we don't like to use that word, but certainly we feel like in 905, there's no question in the surrounding GTA markets, they went up so high in such a short time, and they're going to have the bigger
was just
distance to correct.
unsustainable, yeah.
Toronto fairly, kind of resistant to any sort of change because prices were already so high, and that's not going to change. But I think we need to, the more and more of us that get those messages out, even to the politicians so they understand the correction in some ways
Yeah,
has
we
already
don't
started.
need major,
We don't need major
government
change.
intervention.
No.
Because politically, some of those things sound
It's a
really
hot
good.
topic,
so
right.
it may not necessarily have the effect that they either know about or want. But it's a foreign buyer tax sounds good. But,
Absolutely.
but even in 2017, as we saw, it really didn't have any
Right.
large
lasting
effect.
effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, this was again so fun. And
For
like
us, hopefully,
Sarah
it's
said,
fun for the other people.
I know we need to get those messages out. So we hope everybody is listening and enjoying, and they'll continue to. And if you have any questions, you can always reach us at team@themillsteam.ca. Share with us your feedback. We love to hear it, and we'll look forward to doing this again next month. Yeah.
And welcome, Christine.